Well, let's get rocking. Well, first up, I'm Lee Roquet. Thank you for joining. I know it's a small pool of people today, but man, super excited to share a bit more about this concept I've been talking about, moving from CS silo to CX. So, look, I'm Lee Roquet. I'm part of the ProVoice team. I'm very excited to share a bit today. I got a couple slides, and then we'll jump into Q&A. And then I've got the chat going. So if you have any questions along the way, let me know. But let's get into it. Okay. Oh, got to switch over to this. Hold on. All right. So one of the biggest things that I notice when I'm working with some customers, and actually had this happen this week, is that the understanding of the power of the revenue, or basically the book of business that is managed by the CS team. I had a VP of CS that I was working with, and was very frustrated on not being able to drive change within the organization. And so I asked her, like, what's your ARR? She's like, $25 million. I'm like, okay. And so what's the kind of net new sales goal? And it was about 5 million. I'm like, okay, well, you see the difference there? And now it's just figuring out how to best use that to drive change across the organization. So when you're feeling like you're stuck in a silo, you got to start thinking about how to communicate to drive change for the team at the top, the C levels, but also how do you align around the revenue journey so that you can have a story to tell with each of the departments that you work with. And so I guess the question that I always ask is it a customer centric? Is that concept kind of more like wall art? Or is it actually a behavior that you can tap into? Because there's two different paths to go if you're trying to change a company that doesn't truly believe they're customer centric versus one that is. So again, most CS leaders manage renewals, activities, and things like that, which is all great. But think about the size of the bat you can swing to drive change within the organization. And so when we start thinking about silos, and this is why I'm pretty passionate about making the shift. I think in the last 10 years or so, CS teams have been just a step in the journey for the business workflow, the customer journey, the revenue journey. And now it's time to change that, but we have to do it smartly. So are we still stuck, if you're taking a baseline, are you still stuck in reactionary, or are you moving yourself to be an orchestrator? So if you're still sitting in a silo where you're waiting for handoffs from other teams, you're reacting to escalations, you're actually kind of just activity-based, then it's really time to step back and think about what is the shifts I can make to be an orchestrator. And again, the shift that I'm seeing when I'm talking to customers is, I think in the past 10 or so years, we've had the luxury of having the sales team be the size it is, the onboarding team, the dedicated professional services team, the dedicated CS team, support teams. Large organizations like this are getting looked at differently. So now, how do we drive the CX value and change our CSMs to be strategic value leaders within an organization? So how we'll do this, talk about this in a second, is really drive and be part of, are you in the sales calls? Are you upstream and downstream more? Are you working with finance more closely? Are you owning the onboarding experience, but not just from the handoff, but pre? And then how are you driving change with your, let's say, 25 million ARR in the product roadmap? And how are you measuring and defining success for your team, but for the business? All right. So I actually pulled this from, it was a couple of weeks ago, but I thought this was such a great exercise to do, to think about if you're needing to drive a different change within your organization. And again, my whole premise is I want to kill silos. I think everybody does. And when you turn a business sideways, you're actually looking at the left or right customer revenue kind of business journey that we're all still embracing, the acquisition and retention funnel, the bow tie. Love me a bow tie. But when you start breaking down the teams that are part of the journey and you ask them, what are they focused on? You get lots of different answers. And typically also what you're getting a lot of different ways to drive rewards and incentives that tend to sometimes conflict. So it's just a really, I think, good exercise to try to get your team together and go, okay, let's really look at this and see what discussions come out of the friction points. And kind of when you see these boxes, every one of those line is a friction point that can either impact team success, business health, or the customer experience. So I don't know, just thought that was kind of a fun thing to try if you have the opportunity to do that. So how do we add value to other teams? This is kind of how I tend to shift culture. If you're if you don't have the wall art and you actually have an organization who truly believes they want to be customer centric, that's amazing. So how do you do it as a CS leader? How do you drive change? One, pointing fingers never works, but you do have a lot of, I guess, strength or power to use again your size of the book of business you're wielding for the company. So, but think about how you can fill the gaps in each of these teams to drive change. So think about the supporting sales and then filling the gap. I've always found, and this has worked for me to close more deals, is that when the latest or last proposal goes out to a customer, between when they actually sign a deal can be weeks. So parachute in the CSM who's going to be owning the value journey for that customer. So book a meeting, outline what's going to happen next, the time to value. How are we as an organization going to ensure their success and the ROI? If you do that, one, it helps with cold feet. It helps with just the buyer's remorse that can set in after when you first sign and get into onboarding. Next, drive the product. You've got to be inviting yourself to those meetings. You've got to bring the customer story. And I'll show in another episode that I have in a couple weeks, I think, how to use the 80-20 rule to shift the way that you look at organizing backlog to revenue. Anyway, and again, enabling marketing. This one's always fun, and it can take some time to build out. But tell the client story, but not just in case studies and quotes and things like that. Actually, build your internal pro voice within your teams. Get a weekly update going to the company. Tell the company story. Start a podcast. Just a little 5-minute, couple questions. Interview your customers. Customers love talking about themselves. Share that. That helps actually drive more marketing insight. And it gets the team empowered to actually tell the value story, not only for the customers, but for the business. So that's a great one and fun to do. All right, last slide. From department head to revenue journey coordinator. And again, the move of CS is to break the silo, tip yourself over, and start thinking about how you orchestrate the value journey aligned to the revenue journey. This is super important. All right. And it takes time, and hopefully you're in an organization where you're actually able to drive change with data. Got to leave the emotion out of it because we all want to tell the right story using data and insights. So I think next step, I would recommend, just to have some fun, run the 2x6 exercise. Just see where you can align people to think differently about what they're incentivized with. I'm a big fan, we'll talk about in another couple episodes, is revenue pods. When you align the team around the revenue and the rewards and the incentives, for example, put some of your sales incentive in year 2 renewal. That changes who they go after, who they land, and who they bring on as customers. Pick one department and try to add as much value, like on the previous slide, that you can. And then measure the impact and expand. The goal is to get every department to start thinking about being part of the revenue journey and not just their individual silo. So I guess call to action. What department can you help first? All right. Thank you. That was my little kind of opening pitch on why we should make this shift from CX to CX or CX to CX. I'll open the QA and we can kind of get going. I'll stop sharing. Hold on. Getting used to this. Stop sharing. And let's open the Q&A. Okay. Let's do this. So I got a couple questions. Can you explain the 2x6 exercise again, what it is? Sure. So the 2x6 is really just meeting with, and you'll have to book some meetings. You might have to go and meet with individual department heads, but get an idea of really how they're measured and how they look at success and how they are treating their view of how they impact the customer and the revenue journey. Try to summarize that into 1 or 2 words. And once you have that all done, then just, pull a meeting together with the department heads and talk through just what you found. And hey, how do we get better aligned to the business health outcomes we need? Because we're all on one team. And then you can just kind of have the discussion kind of flow from there. And so that's just a way to, again, to spark the discussion on friction points, silos, and that everyone is focused on the same thing, the revenue journey. All right. That was a good question. Thank you for that. Let's see. I got the next question. How do you feel customer success gets put in second place in sales? Um, let's see. Trying to figure out how do you feel customer success gets put in second place in sales? Okay, I'm going to answer this in two ways. One, as a second citizen or just the handoff role, and then how can you put them in the passenger seat as part of the sales team? So I see us a lot of times anyway. Sales tends to want to do what they do, get it done. I mean, again, everyone is on the team of trying to make wins, get at bats and win for the company. But how you can actually blend the teams better is not just be sitting there waiting that you have no control, to just be taking the onboarding or taking the handover, or not expecting. I always empower my teams. Like, if you don't get what you need from the sales team, don't accept it, push it back. So, making sure that partnership is happening early on. And so putting a CSM in the passenger seat in the sales process, and going to more of the pod idea, is the sales process. You do your steps, you get to the points, and you bring up the expectation of what the company has around what success is. That we have a team that's dedicated, that your time to value and ROI is super important to us. But we also have a very big, a long program. And I always tell my guys to say this up front. Our goal is to earn the right to renew you over and over again. We want to be your valued partner for years, not just this next 12 months. So making sure that the CS team has a voice early on just has always helped me, and to time to value and the renewal. And again, all the research says if you don't nail the expectations, the the onboarding time to value, you have, I think it's like 70 or 80% higher first year churn rate than if you don't. So that was hopefully I got answered that question. It was kind of a rambly one. Let's see. I got another one. Sales often makes promises CS can't keep. What can we do to keep them from doing this? That's a great question. I think part of that is, one, if you get the CS in to set the expectation on what's actually going to happen, that can help. But two, I mean, I've always tried to set up my incentive programs for my sales teams in a balance. And like I said earlier, is, maybe there's a piece of their commission is based on year two. So when you think about, and this happens across all companies, like sometimes you just got to meet a number and you have to close a deal that's maybe not perfect ICP. But as long as the communication and everybody on the team, it isn't a surprise, they know it, then they can get behind it. It's always when there's no one told the CS team that we had to close this deal because of hitting a number, and they just get told to just deal with it. So removing that friction, I think, is so important. And then just making sure that you're holding your sales team accountable. One thing that actually is a little secret sauce here that I tend to do is make sure you track your first year and second year churn rates back to the sales team, because sometimes you'll get sales teams who are incentivized to close. And you can actually look at, maybe sometimes, I've seen this a few times, your top salespeople are also the top churn drivers. So those are things to track and kind of keep that thing in balance, because it can be a terrible thing. All right, that was good. That was a good one. Let's see, another question. How do you feel AI will impact CS and CX roles? Man, I think I'll give you two. One, I think it's going to be amazing. I think there's so much burden on the CS role. They are the quarterback of the organization. When you truly have a customer-centric company and your CS leader, and hopefully they're moving more towards strategic customer success managers, they are trying to walk the fence of what's best for the business, what's best for marketing, sales, product, finance, and also being an ambassador for the health and value of your customer. So I don't think that role goes away with AI. What I want to see happen, because they are the quarterback, they have to learn, and they're actually the quarterback and also on special teams and playing defense. So they've got playbooks all over the place. I think the average number of of systems and process that CSMs have to do is like 10 to 15. That's too much for any human person to do a good job. So I'm hoping, and I've had an example of this with a team, we actually were able to do a better job sending out weekly updates to customers on what we were doing, why we were doing it, because we were able to take AI, scrape all of the engagement and activities that happened in the in the CRM. We had a project management tool where we did all of our work for the customers. We were able to grab great summaries out of that, all of our call logs for we had weekly calls, and then put that into a summary. And when we sent that out weekly, and we made sure that the CSM read it, but when we started sending that out weekly, our actual every 2 week calls where we actually did calls with customers to usually talk about what happened and why, we didn't have to do that anymore. So then all the conversations started turning to what are we doing next, that's the strategy value that you want all your CSMs spending their time on. So more efficient, and then focused on driving more value and thinking about how to drive the customer's outcomes they need. On the flip side, I think everyone's currently scared about, what's happening with AI, what's going on. Again, my thing is, I think we're going to see a shrinking or lowering of maybe the number of people we need on teams, restructuring. I think the whole post-sales team is going to get restructured. But the number one thing that I keep coming back to is people buy from people. People trust people. We're in the people helping people business. So for me, I think as long as you're shifting and embracing ways to make yourself more efficient and thinking about ways to drive more strategy and value, you're going to be more valuable. So I don't have a fear that the CSM role is going to go away. I'd love to see it be a more strategic value manager, an SVM. Just I'm throwing out a new acronym. Anyway, so great question. I love that. Last question, I think, is what do you mean by kill silos? I think it's super simple or super easy for companies to build organizations around roles, departments. And so one of the things that I've seen is that friction point between teams. If there isn't a culture of customer centricity where everyone can look at being part of the revenue journey for the business health, then you get a very siloed focus on what's my job, how am I measured, and people don't. Hopefully, no one doesn't I don't care about what happens downstream or upstream from my role, and that's what you're trying to negate. Because I think one of the things that I've seen managing teams, being CEO, is like it's really hard to create a culture around the purpose and understanding that at the end of the day, the business has to be healthy to pay paychecks, and part of that is driving an improved team, customer, product, and brand experience so you can be successful. So killing silos for me is knocking everything sideways. Everyone's part of the revenue journey. Everyone's on the bus. That's about business health. All right, got another this one's kind of long. Are you seeing more CEOs understanding this concept and focusing on CX? If not, what do we do to get the CEO to pay attention to this? Oh, I can do spotlight. I didn't have to read these. Here you go. Sorry. Learning. All right. To pay attention to this, like you were talking about. Great question. Yes, I am definitely seeing a shift where I think that's why I've been in a couple of groups and organizations where I'm speaking about what needs to change post-sales, CS, customer success. It's really about the experience that the customer has with your product. I'm a big fan of experience management, which is really focusing on customer, team, product, brand experience as a whole company initiative. If you're at an organization where maybe that isn't the type of company you're working at, and again, there's different types of companies. There's a product-led company, there's a sales-led company, there's a customer-led company. Knowing where you work is important because it has to change how you decide to try and be a customer champion. The thing that I've always come back to is data. Again, if you're a VP of CS and you're managing 25 million in revenue, start using that revenue to drive the change, because at the end of the day, your senior leadership team, they live by numbers, margins, and they're going to be looking at ways to remove risk from the impact of the organization. So you can drive change with that number, making sure that you're always focused on the benefit of the other departments and the overall health of the revenue for the organization. All right, that was a good question. Okay, let's see. Let me close that one off. Okay, one more question, and I think we're getting close to the end here. I think, man, it's great. I'm going to do spotlight. Okay, when you think about startups, what stage are they in when they need to start being strategic about CX? Is it a certain size in terms of revenues or customers? That's a really good question. I mean, I guess coming from how important it is to and how expensive it is to go and get customers to actually then go and retain them. I do think we're going to see this pretty good. I think it's going to be we're going to be much more weighted towards can you retain and grow. I know working with a few PE firms and what they measure, it's great that you can show quarter on quarter net new revenue, but if you can't retain and grow and excite and drive earned growth rate out of your book of business, you're not a business to invest in. So I would say day one, you as a founder, and I know there's tons of these founders coming up where I've like, hey, I've vibe coded my own application. And I'm generating 10 million or $10,000 MRR. You've got a business. How do you scale and grow that? You better be thinking about how you excite, earn the right to renew and grow your customers, because that base is where you're going to actually be driving most of your net new in the future. So I think you got to start day one. Okay. That was a good question. Okay. We got one more question here. This is fun. This is like rapid fire. And hey, spotlight. All right. When you get hired to do fractional CX strategy work, what do companies typically want you to do? Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. The most recent, I was asked to step in because the CEO had to he was taking his kids to college, and unfortunately their VP of CS was on bereavement, and they had to put a pitch deck together for to go raise money. So I jumped in to help gather information about each of the departments, and I had to put we had to put a 2-year model together to forecast out sales and retention, and so it was a big work with a whole bunch of people. But that was just kind of one, and then the other one, it's typically audits, and it's looking at where do we stand and what do we need to fix, and then thinking about kind of how do you scale without tossing just bodies? So how do we blend AI? How do we measure the right thing? How do we hire people? Because that's always the struggle. And when do we need to add the next layer? And so one thing that I was always told, and it seems to be true, is that whenever you double your organization, everything breaks. So when you go from whatever 10 to 20 employees, 20 to 40, 40 to 80, things tend to fall down. So those big pivot points, which are exciting, you have to reinvent, rethink, and especially now with AI, it's so great to be able to think about breaking the old model of the way we staff and build teams and engage with customers. So staying smaller, staying nimble. So back to the question, I mean, it really varies. It varies on the need, but a lot of times right now, it's either, fire situation, or it's should we think about building something new given what we know today? So we aren't just building the old playbooks. We have to be thinking about reinventing what it means to be a healthy organization that manages on a revenue journey. That's why I think the post sales teams, onboarding and success and support, is going to probably have one of the biggest impacts with AI here, and not to make it smaller, but make it more impactful. All right. I think that's all the questions we have. Anyone else? I think Christina, where are you calling in from, Christina? Okay. I was throwing out the chat, but anyway, okay. Well, just with a couple minutes left, I think all the questions are maybe done. Oh, we got one more. Okay, spotlight. What's the best way to connect with you? Oh, after this. Great. Yeah, no. Hey, first off, I want to thank everybody. This has been super fun. I'm Lee with, of course, you can connect with me through the Pro Voice team, but also I'm at XM Elevation. I'm on LinkedIn. So please follow me, connect with me, DM me. We'll chat about CX and how to kill silos and drive awesome value. All right. I think that's it. I'm going to close this off. So, and Christina, thank you. You're in California. All right, everybody, thank you so much. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.